And so it's kind of nice to know that my inner child probably didn't take things as seriously as I do now. I wish I could tell her that everything is going to be even better than you thought.
Welcome to the Medical Trauma Support Podcast, the show where we shine a light on the hidden impacts of medical trauma, explore tools for healing, and empower you to take control of your health journey. I'm Sarah, your host, a passionate advocate for trauma-informed care, somatic healing, and compassionate conversations. I'll bring you expert insights, healing strategies, and personal stories of resilience to help you feel seen, heard, and supported on your path to recovery. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Medical Trauma Support Podcast. And in this episode, Dana Hammerstrom is here to talk to us. Hi, Dana.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. And so Dana is a student at USC, and she has just completed a project that we'll get to hear all about medical trauma. And I thought that it would be really cool for the listeners to get to hear Dana's story and her journey, right? From her early experiences of medical trauma to this project that you are creating as part of your final project for your program, right? For your undergraduate program?
Yeah, so I'm a journalism student at USC, and for the curriculum, it all ends with this capstone project. And so I wanted to choose a subject that wasn't just going to help other people, but was also still meaningful to me and something I wouldn't get sick of talking about for 15 weeks in a semester. And so it all came about very organically. I'm really lucky that they let me do something so personal.
Yes, that's really beautiful. And I have to say that in my graduate program, that is where I was able to do an independent study where I was able to study medical trauma and dive deeper into it and try to find resources. And my project turned into what is medical trauma support. So this podcast came from a project I did in school. And so I just think it's really cool when we're given the freedom to use the time and get credit for studying something that we're really passionate about and is very meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
So that's amazing. So do you want to tell us about your project, or do you want to start from the beginning? Like really what your experience was that led you to this project?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think both were so interlaced in my life without me even knowing it. I feel like it was so important for me to do this project to reconnect with that side of myself that I don't really like to acknowledge existed very often. But I can start from the beginning. So I grew up in the Bay Area, in a little town in the Bay south of San Francisco. I have two wonderful parents, older brother. I had a dog growing up. And so everything was very, I mean, I feel like my childhood was absolutely, absolutely wonderful. When I was around 4 or 5 years old, I started getting some like itchy sensations and bruising on my right side of my leg. It wasn't something that my primary care physician really knew about or understood. Kind of looked like ringworm in the beginning. And so my mom and I had to drive to a few different doctors to kind of figure out what was going on. Eventually, we ended up at a dermatologist's office where they thought it could be linear scleroderma or morphia. It's a form of localized scleroderma. So a lot of times we hear about systemic, where it's kind of inside your body. It's an autoimmune disease on both sides, but the localized or linear is, for me, all on my skin, which I guess is the largest organ of your body. So there we go. And then that whole journey began in age 5, in kindergarten to first grade. I was put on some steroid creams like Dovanex and clobetasol, things like that, and then started oral treatment from the get go. Obviously, I don't really remember this because 5 years old is probably when you start forming memories, and I kind of don't need to go back there. But from the get go, the doctors were very adamant about intravenous pulses and steroid therapy through IVs. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was a huge concern for my parents. I was this very young girl. I hadn't presented any issues for my entire life. And now there's these people that we've never met saying that I'm really sick. And so that was avoided for as long as possible. I did some oral medications. I was on prednisone for a long time, which would not recommend, but you got to do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I started IV pulses when I was, I believe, 6 years old. So a couple of years after my diagnosis. Um, I would go into the doctor. It was about 45 minutes away at Lucille Packard Children's Hospital in Palo Alto, right by Stanford,
Mm-hmm.
or in Stanford, near Stanford. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. So I would go with my parents and stay in the short stay unit. I would have an IV put in usually I think usually on maybe a Thursday, and then do my drip, go home with the IV still in my arm, go back the next day for my drip, and then go home, go back the third day for the drip, and then they would take it out. Um, what I remember from this is honestly still very limited. I don't have many pictures from that time. I can send you the couple that I do have after this,
Mm-hmm.
if you need. I don't know, but it was it wasn't necessarily traumatic in the moment, or I didn't realize it was, and my family didn't either. But it was a very stressful time for my family, and
Yeah.
also for my body. I feel like my body was under a lot of stress.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So I did 3 months of the pulses, going in for 3 days at a time. And
I want to like just take a little pause there.
yeah,
So, um, is it called an IV pulse because you do like a period of time and you take a break and then you come back? Is that why it's called an IV pulse?
I don't know, but maybe.
Okay.
And
Okay.
also the research has evolved. Like later on in time, it wasn't 3 consecutive days that was the strongest. It was 1 day a week for X amount of consecutive weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of uncertainty with how to even go about this, just because the
Right.
research was pretty limited.
Well, and I'm also thinking about your family, right? So this was not in the town you lived in,
Mm-mm.
so you had to travel. It was what you said Thursday, Friday, Saturday,
I think it depended on the week. I could be
depending
making
on the week.
that up.
Yeah, but it's like it is really like regular life gets very disrupted as well, and so that's obviously like a stressor.
Mhm.
Were you able to go to school when you weren't getting treatment, or did you have to take a break from school?
I was in school the whole time, which I think was kind of a blessing in disguise, because some days I would go to school with the IV still in my arm or go on field trips with it.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of just like a thing everyone knew not to touch my arm.
Mm-hmm.
Now I just saw a video where the IV is not even a needle, it's just a little plastic tube. So I didn't even have to keep my arm straight like that.
Yeah.
But I did miss a lot of school and have to leave early a lot of days, but I've always been pretty school focused, and school is kind of like my strong suit. And so it didn't become a problem academically at all,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of missing out on seeing friends and not being understood and not even really knowing what was going on in my own body and
Mm-hmm.
why I couldn't do what other kids were doing. Um, But yeah, I read a lot of books when I was at the hospital, watched a lot of Cake Boss, so
Yeah.
there's some good parts.
Yeah. I'm thinking just about what it must have been like to like have to kind of disrupt your schedule for school. You know, clearly you enjoyed school, like you said, and to like miss out on things. And I think that must have been pretty challenging. And the other thing I'm curious about is do you remember any adults talking with you about it? Like, were you given like information about it, or was it more like, this is what we're doing?
I It's all very blurry.
Hmm.
I remember at least my parents trying to explain, and a lot of I remember talking about my body like attacking itself,
Hmm.
which is autoimmune at the most basic level, but it
Hmm.
seems so backwards that your body could do that. Um, I also remember being neighbors with my primary care physician when I was young,
Hmm.
and he actually came over to our house and sat at the kitchen table with my mom with this huge book all about dermatology, and that's where they found what I could have had. So I
Hmm.
remember there being a lot of protectiveness of the close adults in my life, and
Hmm.
teachers were obviously very understanding and accommodating. At the hospital, it's definitely more blurry. I remember really loving my rheumatologist at the time, and my dermatologist too. It was nice to feel like people were kind of looking out for me, even though I didn't know what was going on. But it was getting the actual IV put in was very not I was not happy during that time. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of the blurriest part where maybe they could have been talking me through it a little bit differently, but I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So that's the part that you remember being like the scariest for you is having the IV put in.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
I would kind of we would call them like meltdowns before I knew that they were full panic attacks. I would be totally fine going in, maybe a little bit of nerves or sweaty palms or a stomach ache. I would have numbing patches put on both of my arms, just like in my
Mhm.
forearm.
Mhm.
And until they rolled the cart out with the needle, I was fine. And when they
Mhm.
rolled the cart back out of the room, I was totally fine. It was just that middle moment where I felt like I couldn't breathe, uncontrollably crying, having to be held down, not nothing like how I feel like I act in my everyday life. So,
Right. Yeah. So I think what you said about having to be held down, I think is one of the hardest things about um, medical experiences. And I think it's happened so often to kids that kids are held down because the adults around them are like, well, we have to do this treatment, right? Oftentimes, like it's like to save somebody's life. Um, but when we think about what's happening in the body when somebody's really scared, they're in sympathetic charge and they want to run or fight, which we are biologically wired to do,
mhm,
and you're held down, you know, you can think about like how impactful that is on our bodies and how scary that feels. Even though logically, you know, you're like, well, that was the treatment that I needed at the time, and I wasn't going to, you know, I was struggling, but I guess I just want to pause for a minute and acknowledge like how hard that must have been to be trying to fight and run away because you were sensing extreme danger,
mhm,
and to not be able to do that. And I think another thing with medical procedures with kids too is the parents are there because they're trying to take care, or they are taking care of their kids, right? We're taking care of their children. But for young children especially, it can almost seem like our parents are like complicit in this
mhm.
really horrible thing that's happening to us. And
Yeah.
that's really challenging. That's really confusing for kids.
I know my mom and I have a lot of conversations now that I'm pursuing this project where she feels a lot of guilt about how she how we went through this whole process as a family. Um, in my opinion, I think I don't know what I would do as a parent, and so I completely would do the exact same thing that my mom did, but sometimes she feels like maybe we should have made it seem like less of a deal and my both of my parents didn't have to go to every single treatment or things like that. But it you'll never know. I mean, I could have had the same exact reaction and just not had that support, or I feel so I feel guilty that she feels guilty, but we all have that little Catholic guilt in us. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and speaking as a mother, mother guilt and the questioning of should I have done this, should I have done that? It's so strong. It's so hard to resist. I mean, I guess technically, if you don't resist it, it probably will be easier to manage. But I've shared on this podcast that what brought me here is the experience of being the mother and caregiver and witness to medical procedures that were painful and scary for one of my children. And of course, like when that happened, I didn't know what I know now. Right. So I think for us to recognize we are always doing the best that we can with the information that we have. And so, um, I don't know, maybe I would probably say that to your mom, right? Like she was doing the absolute best she could. There was, that's just what we do as parents and really as humans. We're all doing the best that we can in that moment. And it's hard when we become more knowledgeable and more educated to be like, oh man, I wish that I had known this back then. Because I personally have felt that so many times. I wish I had known this. I wish I had been able to do something different to show up even differently with my son than I did. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's probably a very common feeling for parents when their child, who they love more than anything in the world, is going through a scary medical process that many times they're going through it to save their lives. And it's just that trauma is going to happen sometimes, even when we're doing the absolute best thing. And so the beautiful thing and the whole reason that I'm here is because I believe 100% that we have the capacity to heal from it,
Mm-hmm.
but we have to acknowledge it and be with it and process it um, and tap into the wisdom of our body to heal from it. So yeah,
Yeah, it's our all of our first times growing up, so we
yeah,
should give ourselves some more grace.
absolutely, absolutely. So I'm curious. You said that you did those the 3 months of the IV pulses. Is that right? And then what was it like after that?
Unfortunately, that I'm not at the after yet.
Not at the after. So yeah.
So the night it was supposed to be a 4 month stretch.
Hmm.
The night before the fourth and final pulse, we had a bunch of family friends over. We were watching a football game. I think it was the Super Bowl. I don't know. Um, I ended up my two very close friends from childhood were over, and I ended up playing this game where there was like seashells all over the floor. I ended up falling on a sand dollar and I sliced my knee open, and I had to get 14 stitches. And so because I was on immune suppressants for all of the months prior, I had to take over a month off of the pulses. And by the time I could go back, we had to start from the beginning.
Oh
So I
wow.
had to do four more. So I did seven months of pulses in total
Wow.
um, for the first round. Then it was better. Only went to the doctor once every 6 or so months. My first stretch of not going to the dermatologist for a year. By the time I came back, I was in fifth grade and it had relapsed.
Mm.
So then I had to go through some pulses again right before I finished elementary school. But since then, it's been quiet. So we'll see, I guess.
So something I'm really curious about is you talked about like after you finished the pulses and then you went to the doctor every 6 months. What was it like for you going back to the doctor? Like, was it easy to go back to the doctor, or was there some of that, the anxiety that you would feel before the IV?
I think still that anxiety. I mean, I remember very vividly the appointment that I went back after that year stretch where they said that it had come back. I remember my mom saying that I could say any swear word that I wanted. And I think I said crap. Like, I could have done so much better.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I don't really remember the in between visits. It had
Mm-hmm.
become so normal in my life to get picked up from school early or have to run out to the parking lot to beat the traffic to get over the hill to the appointments. And so I assumed that it just felt normal. And it was also at a different office than the IVs were at. And
Mm-hmm.
so that I think helped break up the trauma I was experiencing in one wing of the hospital that maybe I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't feeling across the street.
Yeah. But you were still having to travel for those appointments.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like the last time you were doing those was in fifth grade. And then what have things been like since then for you?
It's a good question. I They say that once you get one autoimmune disease, there's your body is kind of more susceptible to developing more. So that's kind of in the boat where I am in now. Obviously, this happened when I was 11 or 12, and I'm 21 years old now, maybe 22 by the time this comes out. So it's been a decade of being on medications for keeping my immune system low to make sure my body was fully recovered.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Coming off of medications, I started seeing a lot of doctors with my parents that were a little bit more off the grid. I saw a homeopathic doctor when I was finishing up my treatment, who then I became gluten free for a very long time to kind of have a less inflammatory diet.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a lot of supplements through that. I actually got to reconnect with her through this project, which was so lovely. Um,
Amazing.
I would drive an hour and a half or 2 hours to north of San Francisco to see someone who specialized in autoimmune diseases that were caused by Lyme disease. So we explored that track a lot for a while. I would go to Riverside sometimes to see a rheumatoid arthritis specialist, and because he had some autoimmune credentials as well. And my parents and I would go to Disneyland. So it was
That's
kind of a long journey of trying to figure out the source of
mm-hmm.
why this happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then there was a certain point where I started playing sports and I was feeling better, and it wasn't really in our wheelhouse to be doing all of this traveling for this hypothetical answer that probably doesn't even exist. Um, so that was all kind of throughout middle school. High school was very chill in terms of medication and doctor's appointments, but still going in annually for a check in.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, college has been pretty normal. This past year has been um, less certain in terms of my health, just because I'm worried about other autoimmune things popping up. And there's some random symptoms that have been kind of happening, but we are working through it. And I went to a woo woo doctor a couple weeks ago, and he was super great. So I think it's just kind of an ebb and flow of Western medicine and traditional drugs versus the original medicine and in homeopathics. And it'll be a battle that I'll be working through in my head for a very long time, because obviously both sides have helped me so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's hard when you feel like every time you go to the doctor, they're prescribing something new for something that they don't even know is happening.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I am now. But overall, I'm a healthy person. I'm very happy, about to graduate college. So feeling good about that.
Yeah. No, I love that you're exploring what your options are,
Mhm.
right? Because I think I also believe that like holistic medicine and Western medicine can live together.
Mhm.
But that's not how everyone feels. And so just being able to go and see what resonates most with you, what resonates with your body. And I think it's really beautiful that you're doing that exploration and being open to what comes from it.
Mhm. Thank you.
So, you and I spoke before when you reached out about your project, and so I'm really curious about how what the project is, right, and how your experience has brought you to doing the project.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was in class, as we're kind of brainstorming topics, I actually went back into my Google Drive and found this long piece that I had written while going through exposure therapy. I've been seeing an anxiety specialist for a long time now, and
Mhm,
she's wonderful, and kind of was the first one to notice that I might have some medical trauma or
mhm,
PTSD from what happened.
mhm,
And as I'm reading this thing that I hadn't looked at in over a year, I had to get up and leave the room because I thought I was going to throw up. And it was
mhm,
just such an obvious sign that I wasn't done working through what I went through,
mhm,
and wasn't done kind of helping myself heal. And so that was kind of the whole beginning of me thinking that this project could be a way to work through all of that.
mhm,
Um, and it ended up becoming so much better than what I thought. I got to see my rheumatologist that I hadn't seen since I was in fifth grade. Again, she isn't working with scleroderma patients anymore. She's working with PANS and PANDAS kids. And
mhm,
so she has a lot on her plate. But I was actually, after we talked, I found out I was the first solo patient that she had, because we met when she was still doing her residency, I believe. The
wow,
next step before. And so I was like her patient,
mhm,
which and I felt like she was my first doctor too. So that
mhm,
was kind of a special little moment. I got to reconnect with my homeopathic doctor that I hadn't talked to in even longer. And she is exactly the same. She actually moved down south. So I'm thinking about driving out to San Diego to say hello to her. And then, of course, my dermatologist that I saw consistently all through high school, she's been super supportive too. And also the people that I've gotten to meet, we got to meet and connect. And you have honestly taught me so much about how it's okay to have trauma. And
mhm,
also, it's so much more normal for this to happen to people than I ever knew.
yeah,
Um, it's just been so nice to talk about it in such a
mhm,
candid way. And honestly, I want to be a journalist because I love connecting with people and talking to people, and this just proves that I'm in the right career field.
yeah. I think that's so beautiful. I think so often we're kind of driven to our purpose and our passion by experiences that we've had. And oftentimes they are hard experiences that we've had. And I just think, gosh, what a beautiful way to like be on your healing journey, to go back and have conversations with the people that were there when you were more like in the thick of it.
Mhm.
And wow. So tell me, or tell the listeners and me, what is your project? Like, what is this final project like?
So it is going to be a multimedia website.
Mm-hmm.
It will have text. I'm editing a video for it right now, images as well, and tentatively a graphic. Although I'm not the best coder, so I'm still kind of working out the kinks there. But it will be public. I have been pulling a lot of photos and videos from when I was young. And in so many of them, I have looked at them my entire life and never noticed the scars that I have from my disease. And
Mm-hmm.
so looking for pictures where you can see my leg and my arm has been kind of weird. It's like when I was young, I never really thought that it was obvious to people. And so it's kind of it's kind of nice to know that my inner child probably didn't take things as seriously as as seriously as I do now.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could tell her that everything is going to be even better than you thought. I don't know. I
That's
don't
beautiful.
think I don't think I knew how long I would be, not even long. I don't think I knew how I could turn this into such a wonderful thing at the
Mm-hmm.
time. And I also don't know if I knew that I would actually get to achieve things and not just get by. And hopefully one day I won't be on medicine for my whole life, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not too worried.
Yeah. That's really beautiful. And I do personally believe that those little younger parts of us are there and they're listening, and we can show them how great it is. Yeah. And so I can put in the show notes a link to your website. And, I have a lot of ideas in my head about how helpful it could be to people, but I'm curious what your hopes are for how this helps other people.
I think the biggest thing is just knowing that you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in talking with the people that I've gotten to talk to, they have shown me that it's so much more about community than what I felt when I was going through it. When I
Mm-hmm.
was sick, it was my parents and my brother, although he was in middle and high school at the time, so he had his own things to worry about. But it was such a small group of people that really knew and understood. And now I'm meeting people who are like leading chapters of support groups in their town and meeting up with people that also have scleroderma. I still have never physically met someone in real life who has this, which I'm hoping to do by the time the project goes live. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just when you know someone has this same thing and has taken the same pills that you've taken,
Mm-hmm.
I just feel so I don't know the word. Understood. I feel like I've said that way too many times. I feel like we're related on a level that I will never be able to achieve with anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I wish that I had had when I was sick and when I was young. And so I hope that in sharing my experience and in sharing other stories from other folks that will be featured on the site, people can understand that it is okay that this is still bothering you 5, 10, 20 years down the line. And it's
Mm-hmm.
okay that you might want to get a little help and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was over when the treatment was over and when I wasn't sick anymore. But it will never be over. My scars will be on my body for the rest of my life. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something I used to be afraid of. And now it's kind of something I'm proud of.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, this is a part of me that I want you to understand. And I want you
Mm,
to acknowledge, not just
mhm.
ignore. Um,
Right. Yeah, that was part of your journey, your life journey up to this point, and is a part of who you are. Yeah, I think that's so beautiful. And in my mind, that's what I was thinking about. Maybe a young person who has just been diagnosed,
mhm,
finding your website and seeing your story. And, when I talk to you about it, yeah, there is definitely, there's pain and anxiety, but there's also so much hopefulness
mhm,
and light. And so I think sometimes when we're really in the thick of things, it can feel so dark and lonely and like we're never going to see the light again.
mhm,
And to see somebody who's been there, but they can feel the light and they can see joy and they can feel hope, I think is just I'll go back to the word hope again. It really helps people to feel hope.
mhm.
Um, and so I just think it's so beautiful that you've done this. I'm so excited to see it and so happy to share it far and wide.
Thank you. And I do want to say I am one of the lucky ones. My form of scleroderma was at most maybe going to make it so I was not able to walk. But so many people are still going through treatment every single week, every single month. And so I am very fortunate to be able to figure this out on my own terms in terms of figuring out the trauma PTSD side.
Mhm.
But I know a lot of people aren't as lucky in that
Mhm.
regard. And so I hope they can still get something from this project. If anything, it's just that you're not you're not going through this alone.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like what you said earlier, is you're not going through it alone. And even though you're doing treatments that are to improve your health, and there can also be some trauma that comes along with it.
Mhm.
And to like validate that feeling too, to validate that um, it's hard. It's hard emotionally too,
Mhm.
and you deserve care emotionally too. So just like you're getting the care for your physical body, you're also getting the care for your emotional self. And yeah, I just thank you for making this. And before we wrap up, I was going to see if there's anything you want to make sure that you say before we close up that you want people listening to hear.
I mean, just thank you for listening. And I know I'm pretty young and new to figuring out how to be a voice in this sphere. This is very new for me.
Well, I really think that your voice is so important and young voices are so important,
Mhm.
so I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so happy that you are creating a platform for your voice to be heard. So thank you. And thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I'm so excited for people to get to hear about the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Medical Trauma Support. And I wanted to let you know that we are just opening a brand new community for people healing from medical trauma. It is called the Befriend Your Body community, and you can find out more at medicaltraumasupport.com.